It's time for the Pittsburgh Sports Reporters, an inside look at your teams in your city.
Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Reporters on PittsburghSportsHub.com. I'm Stan Savran of 970 ESPN alongside Tim Benz, the morning host of the X Morning Show on WXDX FM. Monday night football. Tim, it's a big game. Anytime you play under the lights, would you consider this a must-win for the Steelers?
Yeah, if you look at some of the numbers of teams that start 0-2 in the NFL, they're still pretty daunting. I kind of thought that stat had petered itself out, but it sure hasn't. I think it's 5 years in a row now where no one has made the playoffs starting 0-2, and only 12% of teams that start 0-2 do make the playoffs in the NFL. From where I sit, Stan, this has to be a makeup game for the one that just happened with the Steelers. If you're somebody who really does believe that they can still be 10-6 or 9-7, I'm not. But for some people who believe that they still have that opportunity, then this game against Cincinnati has to kind of cancel out the one that they should have gotten against Tennessee. Because if you're doing the whole go by the schedule, they win this one, they lose this one, they win these two, they lose these two, Tennessee had to be a win. You could have easily said that this one against Cincinnati was supposed to be a loss. It could balance out a little bit. The one thing that I think that's a dynamic that's in their favor moving forward tonight against the Bengals is that they tend to play so well at Paul Brown Stadium. In fact, they tend to play better against the Bengals at Paul Brown Stadium than they do when the Bengals come here to play in Pittsburgh.
And they've always been very good after a loss. Generally, they're very good after a loss.
Monday night, they're usually pretty good.
And Monday night, they've been very good under Tomlin. They've covered, anyway, 11 of the last 12 games at Paul Brown Stadium. I thought that's why the Tennessee game was important, because you had to go on the road. You've got a 2-0 Bears team coming in here, then the Vikings in London, but the Bears game will be here. I think it's important that they win. However, I think something even more important that if you're thinking over the course of the season, they need to play well. If they lose the game tonight but play well, it'll still be 0-2. Nothing will detract from that. But if you're looking beyond that, if they were to play a stinker game and get dominated by the Bengals, now I think that the season is teetering on the brink. If they lose tonight, which is not advisable because of the numbers that Tim cites, but if they play well, I think that could bode well because, the Bears have done well, but they've won 2 games in the last second. The Vikings have Adrian Peterson, not much else, and the Steelers generally stop the running game pretty well. They did last week against Chris Johnson. So I think it's critical that they play well tonight because I think if they get dominated again, they're going to be – I don't care how much success they've had in the past – given last year, given the preseason, and going 0-2, 2 bad performances, there's going to be some very shaky confidence, foundation of confidence in that locker room.
I'm wondering if there is already, to be frank, especially after the injuries that they suffered, because so much of what they spouted, the players and the coaches, ownership, everybody, management, was that this year we think we got a chance if we can all and keep the offensive line upright and keep our players on the field making impact plays on defense. But when you see a guy who was a turnover machine at the end of the year and Cortez Allen go down, and you see Larry Foote go down with unproven players behind them, even though it seems to be strength in numbers, the inside linebacker, and of course Pouncey at center, there's a huge wrinkle they weren't anticipating.
There is a cry in the community, a wail is more like it, that the Steelers, instead of trying to improve the running game, which is abysmal and has been for years now, and just let Ben throw the ball. What people don't seem to understand, they want more passing, they want longer passes. To do that, you have to protect the quarterback. And as bad as the run blocking has been, the pass protection has been even worse.
Right.
So should they just say, here, Ben, do the best you can and give us our best chance to win? Or do you believe that you still have to establish at least some kind of a running game, if for no other reason, Tim, than to help out your pass blockers?
I think that they're more likely to win games based on Roethlisberger throwing the ball. But you're right in the sense that if they can't pass block, and we'll throw the third component in there, if there's these receivers, if they're not getting open like they used to, then that's a problem too. And I don't think they are. I don't think that Brown is getting open quite as much. Sanders isn't. And when he is, he's not bringing the ball in. It's like kind of close, good effort, but the ball isn't coming down in his hands. And, they're missing Mike Wallace, I think, to a degree as well. Everybody was saying, well, let's hope that's addition by subtraction. Oh, that's not what they're thinking in Miami after what happened yesterday when he showed up. There's no Heath Miller. that they can rely on. So I don't know what the answer is, Stan. I would be more inclined to say that the upside is there if they can block for Roethlisberger than there is upside if they can block for Isaac Redmond or Felix Jones. Yeah, there's more upside for Ben, but there's also potential for negative plays, too, like 5 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards on a sack.
And I think as porous as the offensive line has been, there ought to be a caveat mentioned, and that is the running backs, all of them, have done a horrible job in blitz pickup. That's their job. It's not just the O-line. And the receivers are not getting open. They don't get open. Ben has to hold the ball longer and longer. It's not a defense for the offensive line, but it's a combination. The pass rushers are not doing pass blockers are not doing their job from the running back standpoint, and the wide receivers are not getting open, and I have severe doubts. And, of course, Marcus Wheaton, much better off to get a sideline pass and never put a helmet on. That's, I'm sure, why they drafted him. Let me switch quickly to the Pirates. Is there any reason to think at this point, let's project they're going to be in the playoffs. We don't know, wild card, division. Is there any reason to think that Garrett Cole shouldn't be moved up to the number 3 guy now?
I think a lot of that depends on Morton's health and availability. The way that Garrett Cole is pitching, if this continues, and this just isn't like a second wind or a hot stretch for him, if this continues and he's as good at the very end of the season after another start, maybe 2, and Morton is not, I wouldn't have a problem going with him. You know, this whole planning out of the rotation, though, Stan, to me, is a little bit premature in the sense that we don't know exactly what they're going to be playing for that last series against Cincinnati. So, and Clint Hurdle spoke about this in advance of the game 2 days ago, the Sunday game, yesterday, that I'm not going to worry about the rotation if I feel like I need Francisco Liriano with 2 games left and then I need to use A.J. Burnett with 1 game left, and then that stacks the rotations that it's Morton and Cole. I still think unless somehow the way things break out, they don't have to worry about those last couple games against Cincinnati. They might have to go to both Morton and Cole in the postseason early, and I'm okay with that. I'm better with it now than I was 3 weeks ago when it felt like Cole might have been running out of gas. But, boy, he's been really good the last couple starts. I'm okay with it now. I'm feeling a lot more confident.
Yeah, the thing about him is that he doesn't shrink from the moment. You know, they talk about rookie. He's not that kind of guy. I mean, you look at the bulldog in him, and keep this in mind about whether it's worth trying to win the division. If you win the division, then you get to rest until Thursday, and that means whoever pitches Saturday will be able to start.
Right, because you get on the
Thursday.
short end of the stick. If you're a National League team that would need to have a playing game,
that would be on Tuesday.
You get it right after the end of the season. But should you win, then you get the benefit of having the extra day in between because that's when the AL plays theirs. And same thing if you were to need to stretch it out based on how the division were to stack at the end of the regular season, if you would need extra games. They might need that in the American League with how crazy their wild card situation is.
Yeah, their wild card game is Wednesday, and then they have to start the division series on Thursday, which is totally unfair.
And to your point about Garrett Cole, are we okay with him being emotive on the mound now? I mean, that was really driving me nuts for a while, where everybody was all happy and defensive of A.J. Burnett being an emotive guy on the mound. But it was a bad thing if Garrett Cole did it because he's a rookie and he shouldn't do that. You know, if you're emotive, then you're emotive. And I don't know why people were sort of defending A.J. on it, but ripping Cole for it. He gets mad at himself.
By the way, I don't defend A.J.
Oh, I don't either. Like, you talking about the Barmas thing?
Yeah, the Barmas thing.
I thought he showed up Barmas.
I'll tell you who he really showed up. He showed up Clint Hurdle and Nick
the
Leyva.
Bullpen
well, the bullpen, but he did it this time too.
Oh, because the shift.
Because the shift. That it is not his responsibility to move the fielders. It is not his job to position his defense. They put Barmas there because of a reason. An excellent article in the Tribune Review yesterday about now, they're not going to be right every time, but it wasn't that he showed up Barmas, but again, he showed a disdain for what the manager's job is, what the coach's job is. You know, there was a reason. They study this stuff. Are they right every time? No. Will it work every time? No. But again, it's not his job. And I think as far as Cole being emotive, the concern was, does it hurt himself? Does he get so emotional that he gets out of his game? If he can control it, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I don't think that he was giving up 8-9 hits in appearance because he was too emotional. I thought he was giving up 8-9 hits in appearance because he didn't have a wipeout pitch to get guys out on 2 strikes. And I don't know if 1 + 1 = 2 there, because in a lot of those cases, when he was having some of his rough outings, he was still getting 2 strikes on a guy, and he just couldn't put him away. And now he's putting guys away.
Yeah, and I think that talks about his breaking ball. Last thing, Clint Hurdle seems intent on moving Jason Grilli back into the closer's role. His velocity's down. That's obvious. Why is he so insistent on that? Why not him in the 8th and Melanson in the 9th? And do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's weird. It's on one hand, he's trying to do that, but on the other hand, he's also trying to introduce Tony Watson and Kyle Farnsworth into more high-leverage positions more often. He wants to bring clarity to stacking his bullpen, but at the same time, he's kind of muddling the picture down the stretch. And it is good that Farnsworth seems to be an addition that maybe they didn't count on, and Watson has gotten better and better since the All-Star break. But I don't think you have to have the agenda of Grilli being in the closer's role. I don't mind him trying to see where he is. And if Grilli isn't performing, then it becomes all the more clear to him, too, that maybe it's not his gig anymore. And he's got to go back into that mindset that he had last year, where the 8th inning was just as important as the 9th. And you see it all the time, Stan. You've seen it for years. These closers feel like nothing matters unless it's the 9th inning. And maybe he's been flat as a result. Maybe that's been part of it. I think the bigger deal is the velocity. Like you pointed, he's only throwing 91, 92 right now, right?
Yep.
But maybe that's been part of it, is he just doesn't feel as energized going into the 8th. But that's a role he's going to have to accept and go back to if he doesn't elevate his game back up and Melanson is still pitching well.
And then, of course, by the process, it filters down. Now, all of a sudden, you're 7th, if you want to use them that way, with Watson and Wilson is really strong.
Well, Hurdle was talking about even using Watson regardless of righty-lefty in the 7th.
In the 7th, right. So, right, exactly, because he actually has a better batting average against right-handers than he does left-handers. All right, thank you for joining us today on Pittsburgh Sports Reporters on PittsburghSportsHub.com. We'll see you again next week.